Okay, so I hope you can see my screen now. I'll just make it full screen. And as I mentioned, this is the 33rd Pain Journal Club by the Mumbai Pain School. And today we are having Dr. Saipriya Tiwari from New Delhi as our faculty, and Dr. Pranav Arora and Dr. Akhil Bala is going to present. And I think the topic is extremely important because it's very common. That is the caudal epidural MIPSI. And we are going to discuss on the ultrasound guided procedure. Before we begin, just an introduction about the pain medicine in India. It's quite diverse. Many physicians practice it in different ways across the country. And it has got variable standards, different learning requirements, and as a result, different offerings. Probably we are one of the few countries in the world which, or shayad only the country in the world which is offering a 3-hour fellowship program also, as well as we have a 3-year fellowship program, which is a DM, that is a training program also. So money and time is involved, and the anesthesiologists have to spend both these things to gain this knowledge. To overcome these issues, Panisha Spine Wellness and Pain Relief Center is running the Mumbai Pain School, and here the aim is bridging education with practice, and we are utilizing the social media to reach people and to impart education. Recently, we have started our Instagram page, as well as we are on Twitter now. So the key here is online learning, on-demand videos, just like Netflix. We have both free and paid content, and we are doing the hands-on workshops as well as in when the COVID situation permits. We are fortunate to have expert faculty from all over the world. It's said that the best teachers, they teach from the heart and not from the book. And Journal Club is just a club. The only difference is that here we critically evaluate the recent academic literature, and the subject of interest is defined before, and audience participation is encouraged, and that is the attendee participation is the most important thing in any journal club. So please feel free to ask any questions, even if you think it is a stupid one. We'll love to answer this. Also, this is the venue for the first journal club which was documented, Bartholomew's Hospital, London, and Sir James Paget was the one who conducted this. Cost of the journals across the Atlantic forced Sir William Osler to conduct his journal club, which he started in Montreal in 1875. Even Harrison conducted it twice a month. Time is very important, so I'll request the speakers to stick to time with discipline. Healthy skepticism or praise is most welcome. So if you feel that the authors have done something great, please appreciate them. And if you want to criticize, do it in a very healthy way. That is also most welcome. That's the very purpose of a journal club. This is a bit about me. I think I have repeated it a number of times. But today we have with us Dr. Saipriya Tiwari. She has done her PDCC in pain management from the Sanjay Gandhi Postgraduate Institute in Lucknow, where I developed my interest in pain medicine. And she's also qualified her FIP and CCPC. So she's currently working as an associate consultant in Manipal Hospitals, New Delhi. Her area of interests are chronic pain, cancer pain, palliative care, regenerative medicine in pain. And she's got around 18 scientific publications in national and international journals. In addition, she's a regular invited faculty at various pain and palliative care conferences. So welcome, Dr. Sai.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siddharth. At the outset, I want to congratulate you and Mumbai Pain School for starting this unique program of having a journal club in pain medicine. It is very much required in our branch, which is changing every day. So we need to be up to date with the new literature, and we need to change our practice accordingly. So this is very, very useful. So congratulations and all the best.
Thank you. So now I will request Dr. Akhil to please start presenting. Akhil, I will make you the co-host, and then you can just start presenting the first talk. Just put on your CV slide and I'll just read out and introduce you. Yes. So Dr. Akhil Bhalla is MD in anesthesiology, and he's a current fellow in pain medicine, Department of Pain Medicine, D.Y. Patil University School of Medicine, Navi Mumbai. Over to you, Akhil.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. So the article which I will be discussing today is the influence of adjunctive chordal epidural steroid injection on the therapeutic effect of transforaminal epidural steroid injection. So this was a single center retrospective study published in Neurology India 2018, done by Attila Kerselli et al. In the Department of Neurosurgery, Başkent University, Turkey. So epidural steroid injection is used to treat low back pain and sciatica patients who do not respond to conservative treatment. Interspinal injection of steroids have been used to treat sciatica since the early 1950s, which was first described by Levery et al. And it is started being used in clinical practice in the first half of the 20th century. Weiner described the injection of large volumes of saline and procaine into the lumbar epidural space in an attempt to treat the lumbar pain and radiculopathy in 1925. Brown was the first to report the use of steroids in epidural space in 1960, and he achieved complete or transient relief utilizing epidural methylprednisolone in 4 patients with long-standing sciatica. So the epidural space can be assessed through various approaches, that is intralaminal, pre or post-ganglionic transforaminal approaches, and the caudal approaches. So this article used the pre-ganglionic approach. So the authors hypothesized that although the epidural block blocks the nociceptive C fiber conduction, with the large volume, that is around 30 ml of medication is when administered through the caudal epidural injection, clears or dilutes the locally concentrated chemical irritant around the nerve roots. So this washes out the regional inflammatory mediators more effectively than the 2 to 3 ml of volume given in a transforaminal epidural steroid injection. So it has been reported that larger injection volumes are associated with better outcomes. So the outcomes after epidural steroid injections have been reported in many studies, and but the outcomes of a transforaminal epidural steroid injection combined with a caudal epidural steroid injection have been administered but have not been compared in a previous study. So the aim of this study was to compare both in patients who were suffering from severe lumbar radiculopathy. So a cohort of 124 patients were chosen who were suffering from persistent unilateral or bilateral lumbar radiculopathy for at least 3 months and who had not responded adequately to the conservative pain control measure. Transforaminal injection, only the transforaminal injection was preferred in patients who had monoradiculopathy, whereas the combined approach of caudal as well as transforaminal was chosen for patients with multiple level radiculopathy syndrome and a 2-level disc pathology. So the inclusion criteria included patients who had undergone, this being a retrospective study, the patients would have undergone either just transforaminal steroid injection or a combination of both. MRI confirming the diagnosis of only lower lumbar disc disease were included, that is L4-5 or L5-S1 were included. Diagnosed to have a nerve compression related radiculopathy on the basis of imaging and showing findings of disc degeneration, high intensity zones, stenosis, disc herniation. So the physical examination to detect a positive straight leg test or an absence of a motor deficit was an inclusion criteria. The patients who had a sequestrated lumbar disc above the level of L4-5 were excluded. Patients having motor deficits, cauda equina syndrome or comorbids were excluded. Any history to any history of allergies were excluded. Patients having previous administrations of an epidural steroid injection were excluded, and any post-traumatic nerve root compression patients were excluded. So all the procedures were performed by the same physician in an OT which was equipped with a planar fluoroscope, and all the patients were done in a prone position. After skin preparation and draping and adequate local anesthesia, the transforaminal approach was done with the pre-ganglionic approach as described by Lee et al. So the landmark was slightly lateral to the pars intra-articularis on an oblique view, and the neuroforamen near the site of the nerve root impingement at the level above the adjacent disc on a PA view. So 9 centimeter 21G needle was advanced towards the involved neural foramen under the fluoroscopy. So once correctly positioned, 1 ml of contrast was injected to confirm the epidural flow. And just for the transforaminal injection, a 0.5 ml of bupivacaine heavy 0.5% spinal marcaine was injected approximately over 1 minute. This was followed by a 40 mg of methylprednisolone acetate solution in the same position. So these were the images provided by in the article. So this is the AP view in a for a caudal epidural steroid injection, and this is an AP view for the transforaminal epidural steroid injection. So in the combined approach, the sacral hiatus was identified between the horns in the midline near the upper portion of the natal cleft. So after local anesthesia, a 21G spinal needle was advanced through the sacrococcygeal ligament and then further advanced onto 2 centimeter within the caudal canal. The position was confirmed via contrast. And for the combined approach, 0.25 ml, that is half of 0.5% bupivacaine was injected over approximately 1 minute through the transforaminal needle, followed by a 20 mg methylprednisolone acetate solution, that is around 0.5 ml. This was followed by 0.25% ml of 0.5% heavy bupivacaine given over 1 minute in the caudal epidural space by the needle in the caudal space, followed by the 20 mg, that is 0.5 ml of methylprednisolone acetate solution. Following this, 25 ml of 0.9% sodium chloride solution was administered over approximately 2 minutes via the same caudal needle. So the patients were kept in the outpatient clinic for 30 to 60 minutes after the procedure. Paracetamol was permitted as a rescue analgesia for the following 4 weeks after intervention, but the patients were advised to avoid any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So post-op assessment, the VNS scale for pain intensity was used, Europol assessment in the 5 dimensions for the impact on quality of life, and the NAS instrumentation for patient satisfaction scores were used. VNS and Europol 5D were measured before the treatment and after the treatment for first, 6th, and the 12th month. Europol 5D comprises of 5 dimensions, that is mobility, self-care, usual activity, pain, discomfort, and anxiety. Each dimension has 3 levels, that is no problem, some, or severe problem. In NAS, the patient are invited to choose from one of the 4 possible responses, that is with a successful outcome, having a NAS score of either 1 or 2. So VNS and the Europol were recorded at the first clinical examination before the interventions were done. Physical therapy and a rehabilitation specialist who was blinded to the pre-injection score assessed the outcomes after 1 month of the procedure, which was short term. Then another independent observer, which was blinded, re-evaluated the patients at 6 and 12 months. And at each follow-up appointment, they were subjected to a neurological examination to detect any short or long-term adverse effects. So the extent of correlations in between the groups were determined using the Pearson correlation test, and paired sample t-test was used to compare the means of the variables, and p less than 0.05 was considered statistically significant. So there was no significant difference in the 2 groups having in the demographic criteria in the alone transforaminal epidural steroid injection and the combined group. So 52 patients each out of 124 eligible patients were chosen. 20 of the patients were lost to follow-up. So coming to the first result, the VNS based pain intensity scoring. So as you can clearly see, in the first month, 6th month, as well as the 12th month, the scores improved drastically. That was, they were significant. But as you can see by the graph also, the gray showing the combined caudal as well as the transforaminal epidural steroid, they had better results as compared to the transforaminal alone. Coming to the quality of life by Europol 5-dimension score, again there was significant improvement in the first month, 6th month, as well as the 12th month. And coming to the patient satisfaction score, the patient's satisfaction score was not significant in the first month, whereas it showed improvement in the 6th month as well as 12th month for both the procedures, and more satisfaction scores in the combined group. Coming to discussion. So it was found that both the transforaminal epidural steroid as well as the combination of the caudal and transforaminal were effective, but the combination had a superior short-term pain outcome as well as superior long-term pain, quality of life, and patient satisfaction score outcome as compared to the transforaminal alone. So this study highlights the long-term therapeutic benefits of adjunctive caudal epidural steroid with transforaminal approach. So the potential mechanism of action being a large volume of injection given as a part of caudal addresses and prevents any adhesions from developing due to the chronic compression around the nerve radicle, which may confer better long-term results than transforaminal alone. So the combined approach is much less invasive as opposed to surgery, and hence it is suitable for intravertebral disc pathology such as annular disruptions, any high intensity zones, and disc protrusion. So if any urgent intervention is not warranted, a fast and reliable result can be obtained by an epidural steroid injection technique. The transforaminal approach is a selective procedure for a nerve root and can be useful to detect a radiculopathy. However, some complications have been seen, such as spinal cord infarction, that may develop after a particulate steroid injection or a needle tip displacement while performing the intervention. The authors did provide some photographs regarding the same. So these issues can be prevented by injection of a contrast agent under fluoroscopy by bupivacaine injection to obviate the vasospasm before the steroid injection. So these were some images provided by the author showing a displacement of the needle tip during the intervention and consequent steroid distribution in the muscular plane in the images. So there are few complications as well of the caudal epidural steroid as in literature, such as dural puncture, vascular injection, hypotension, paresthesia, as following a caudal injection. Majority of the patients with a lower lumbar radiculopathy will need to use traditional or anti-neuropathic analgesics at some point in the treatment, whether or not they undergo a surgery. So many of the drugs are poorly tolerated and affect the quality of life of the patient. So in this study, there was no immediate or any late complications due to the drug administered or any injection methodology followed in the patient. So it was traditionally thought that the characteristic pain that defines the disc is caused by direct compression of the nerve root by an intervertebral disc. Nucleus pulposus, being an avascular structure, is perceived as an antigen and triggers an intense inflammatory response when it comes in contact with the nerve structure. The radicle is particularly sensitive to mechanical irritation when it is inflamed. So the main principle underlying the use of an epidural steroid injection in low back pain with radiculopathy is the removal or suppression of these secreted mediators from around the nerve fiber. So the DRG are more sensitive to mechanical irritation rather than chemical irritation. So here the author used the preganglionic approach to inject the solution close to the ventral surface of the nerve radicle to improve the efficacy of the treatment. A limited volume of injection can be delivered by this approach alone, and the technique is reliant on the expertise of the operator. In this case, the operator was a single person. The previous studies have shown that preganglionic transforaminal approach is effective in short term but not in long term period. So it is not clear whether the additional benefits which are conferred by the caudal epidural steroid that were evident in the study are brought about by the disruptions of the adhesion and any irrigation of the epidural space or dilution or removal of the inflammatory mediators as they hypothesized, or by another currently unidentified mechanism. So there were some limitations which the paper accepted. The cohort was relatively small, the patients were not randomized, and functional assessments were not done post procedure. The study was not prospective. Only patients with a lower lumbar disc herniation were enrolled to provide similarity between the two groups. So coming to the critical analysis, so this was the first study to assess the efficacy of combined approach versus the conventional approach for transforaminal epidural steroid for low back patients. So the strength of the study was that there was only a single investigator performing all the interventions, so there was no interoperator bias. The preganglionic approach itself has a better short-term outcome, as already discussed, and as compared to the conventional approach. So this wasn't compared in this article, that had they used a conventional approach as compared to the combined approach with the caudal epidural, what outcome it would have. A prospective randomized control trial needs to be formulated to assess the benefits of this combined technique over transforaminal epidural steroid injection alone. So this combined technique may have a better short-term as well as a long-term pain relief, better quality of life, and a better satisfaction, but should be used with caution and requires a meta-analysis to validate the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akhil. So Dr. Sai, will you like to ask some questions now, or we can do that in the end combined, whatever?
If you allow me, so very good presentation, Dr. Akhil, and this was a
Yes.
relevant paper to be discussed. So I also went through this article, and the only question that I want out there is that the authors in this study have used heavy marking. So how many of us are using heavy marking in epidural space is what I wanted to ask, because I'm not using heavy marking, I'm using normal bupivacaine. So is there any relevance of using that? That is one thing I felt. Another was the method in which they have injected the drug when injecting through epidural, through the caudal space, 0.5 ml local, then little bit of steroid, then little bit of local, then little bit of steroid, and then suddenly a flush of saline. So is there any logic behind this? So these are the two questions I wanted out there if anybody wants to comment.
Akhil, you can reply first, then
Yes. So
you just
replying
reply.
to the
Don't
first,
go to the presentation. Just reply.
yeah. So replying to the first question, it is not justified because we ourselves are not using heavy marking, and but the the volumes being given are very low. So maybe they would achieve the required results as given with the same drug. And what is the second question now?
Please carry on.
Second doesn't have any definite answer to it, because it was the approach they followed, and plus what they said was, what my query in the same thing was, that there was this paper, which is again not a randomized control trial, a paper by Wu Li et al. And published in the Korean Journal of Radiology. So this was a retrospective study conducted in 40 patients who used the preganglionic approach. And there has never been a randomized control trial for a preganglionic approach. So how far is just a preganglionic approach? Like in this study, they could get a good result with preganglionic along with a caudal epidural approach. But had a conventional approach been used, they would not have gotten the same result. But I need a different take on it.
So there are these variables which need to be addressed, probably because they already used a technique which was already considered superior. So whether it is because of that reason, or whether the caudal epidural alone has given that benefit, it is probably not known. So that is okay. Great. So I think, do you want to add anything, Sai?
No, I think that's it. And after having read the paper, it would be interesting to combine both the approaches. It would be interesting to see that if we do have these kind of patients, what kind of result do we get if we combine a transforaminal injection along with a caudal. However, the approach that I would probably take in attempting this in my practice would be that first I would like to give a caudal, see the dye spread. If I'm happy with the dye spread of the caudal injection, of the caudal root itself, then I probably wouldn't subject the patient to another prick for a second transforaminal injection.
Yeah, probably if you are able to get the dye in the same point where you want to get it through the second needle, then what's the point of putting the second needle at all? So that's also a good point. So great. I think let's move to the next presentation. Dr. Pranav, are you there?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please start your screen share. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, please start your screen share. Yes, you can begin now. Great. I can see your screen. Great. So let me introduce Dr. Pranav. Dr. Pranav is a fellow in pain medicine at D.Y. Patil University School of Medicine. He's done his MD and he belongs to Ludhiana. His area of interest is pain medicine and astrology. So I think soon we are going to have an astrology webinar, and I think all of us will know our futures and what to do. And Pranav will be conducting it. Huh? Great. So over to you, Pranav, now.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
So the topic for discussion for today is comparison of ultrasonography and conventional fluoroscopy guided caudal epidural injection in chronic low back pain. It is a retrospective study published in Turkic Neurosurgery Journal, studied by Serkan Sentil MD et al., performed at University of Health Sciences and Guhani Training and Research Hospital, Turkey. Now, low back pain is caused by mechanical compression of intervertebral herniated disc and related inflammation. Irritation and inflammation of spinal nerve roots present with low back pain radiating down to the leg. Initial treatments are generally conservative, such as rest, physical therapy, or use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs and opioids. An epidural injection can be administered through three approaches: interlaminar, transforaminal, and caudal approaches. Now, materials and methods. Inclusion criteria. It included age from 18 to 85 years, low back pain for more than 3 months, unresponsiveness to conservative management, treatments to such as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, muscle relaxant, and physical therapy. Now, exclusion criteria included presence of a local or systemic infection, missing follow-up data, history of allergy to contrast, local anesthetic drugs, and coagulopathy, and patients with anomalies in caudal structures. Now, first we are taking the technique for USG guided caudal. In the ultrasound guided group, a high frequency linear probe was used to identify the sacral hiatus in the out of plane approach, and thereafter the probe was rotated 90 degrees and brought to the in plane position, and the sacral canal was observed. And after the infiltration of the local anesthetic, a 22 gauge 100 mm echogenic needle was advanced in the sacrococcygeal membrane to the caudal epidural space, and the presence of blood and CSF was determined by the negative aspiration. The location of the epidural area was performed by observing the injection site using the color Doppler. A mixture of 2% lidocaine and 8 milligrams of dexamethasone in saline was injected into the caudal epidural space in accordance with the clinical protocol. Now, this is the picture of the procedure showing the sacral hiatus imaging showing indicating the position of the needle in the caudal epidural space. CES is the caudal epidural space, BS is the base of the sacrum, and SH is the sacral horn. Now, second B picture is the entry of the needle, and third is the C picture is showing the delivery. The color Doppler picture is showing the delivery of the dye. Now, the technique for fluoroscopy. In the fluoroscopy guided group, the patients were placed in the prone position, and the caudal epidural space was visualized with the C-arm in the lateral position. And after the subcutaneous anesthetic infiltration at the injection site, the caudal block needle was advanced into the caudal epidural space with intermittent fluoroscopic imaging. After determining negative blood aspiration and CSF, the epidural space was confirmed in the lateral and anteroposterior position with 1 ml of radiopaque material, a 10 ml mixture of 2 ml of 8 milligrams of dexamethasone, and 2 ml of 2% lidocaine in saline was injected into the caudal epidural space. Now, this is the fluoroscopic images showing caudal epidural injection. First is the entry of the needle. The second picture shows the insertion of the needle with the spread of with the dye being going through the needle, and the C is the lateral anterior posterior view of the caudal injection with the spread of the dye. Now, these are the results, the general characteristics of the patient. The table 1 is showing the procedure time was significantly lower in the group U and group F, as P was significantly lower than 0.001. Now, group 2 is invariably analysis of possible outcomes of predictor of injection effectiveness at the follow-up period. This table wants to convey a successful injection rate higher in group U and group F. As out of 90 patients, 85 received in first term, and group F received 70 patients. Now, in numeric NRS scores of the patients before and after the treatment, the NRS scores of the patient was statistically significant between the pre-op and post-op period at the 3rd week and the 3 months in both the groups. And similarly, in the ODS scores, the findings were the same as that of NRS score. Now the discussion part. In a prospective randomized study comparing the ultrasonography and the fluoroscopic guided approaches in 30 patients with post-laminectomy syndrome, Akaya et al. Found that the procedure time was shorter in the ultrasonography group. Similarly, the procedure time was found to be shorter in the group U than the group F in the current study. Now, Sekiguchi et al. Examined 92 sacrum specimens and reported that the sacral hiatus was closed in 3 specimens, and the caudal block failure was rate was higher in patient with sacral canal diameter in less than 2 mm. Similarly, in this current study, the sacral hiatus was closed in 1 patient in group U and 2 patients in group F. Sacral hiatus patency can be easily assessed with both fluoroscopy and ultrasonography. Therefore, this may be the reason for higher successful injection rate at the first attempt in group U in this study. Now, limitations. To better understand the causes of complaints, clinical data, and imaging details such as quantitative analysis of disc herniations, canal diameters, the degree of disc degenerations, and facet degeneration should be assessed. Now, critical analysis. Patients were not randomized during the procedure, hence the patient in group U were weaker. The adverse effects of the radiation exposure were reported in group F. The exposure dose to each patient and physicians were not recorded. The 3 months follow-up period is insufficient for comparing the medium and the long-term efficacies of both the techniques. The large-scale prospective studies with long-term follow-up investigating the superiority of ultrasonography, CSI over fluoroscopy guided are warranted. Now, the basic take-home message is the USG guided caudal epidural steroid injection had a shorter procedure time and higher successful injection rate on the first attempt than fluoroscopy guided, whereas the pain relief and functional improvement was similar in both the techniques. Therefore, USG guided caudal epidural steroid injection should be considered as an effective alternative for pain management in patients with chronic low back pain. Thank you.
Great. Over to you, Dr. Sai Priya.
Good presentation, Dr. Pranav. So this is another interesting paper, but I do have some criticism for this paper. First thing that you said in limitations, one of the things that you said was that in the ultrasound group, the patients were weaker. What do they mean by that? Because I went back and checked the table. So in the weight comparison, if you go and see, there's not much difference. Okay, they're comparing between 78, 79 kilos versus 84 kilos. See, it's 79 kgs versus 84 kgs weight.
Yes.
So I don't think there's any need to call a 79 kilo person weak. Hai na? So I think this is just a zabardasti wala point which the authors have written. Apart from that, in this particular study, what I felt lacking was that their inclusion criteria is very vague. They have taken patients with low back pain. What exactly do they mean by low back pain? Low back pain, as we know, is a very broad definition, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
The authors have not really clarified what they mean by low back pain. They've just said inclusion criteria is low back pain. So that is one thing that came to my mind. Another was that one of their primary study objectives is procedure time. But again, they have not defined procedure time. There is no clear definition of procedure time in the paper. It can be anything, right from identifying the target to injection of the drug, or right from starting the procedure. It can be anything. It can mean anything. So these are the 2 points which I felt I should mention on this forum, which I felt lacking in this paper. Having said that, ultrasound is no doubt a boon in our pain management practice. So I guess all of us have now started using ultrasound in practice. It is very, very convenient, very, very easy, and definitely procedure time, although the authors have not defined in the paper, but definitely procedure time is shorter, even I feel, with ultrasound. So that is my take on this, that yes, if you can do a procedure ultrasound guided, then nothing like it. Of course, the confirmation which you get after seeing the dye on fluoroscopy, that you will not get on ultrasound. You have to give a specific amount of dye or volume of drug, sorry, not dye, drug, a particular volume of drug to be sure that you've covered the nerve root levels that you wanted to. In fluoroscopy, you can be sure then and there whether or not they're covered. That doesn't happen in ultrasound. So I have also seen a lot of people using a combination of both the techniques, ultrasound as well as fluoroscopy. So what people do is that they use the ultrasound to enter the caudal canal, and then once they have put in their needle, they confirm the position and the dye spread with the fluoroscope. So sometimes some people are also using both the techniques for better results. So that is what I had to say for this paper.
Great. Thank you, Sai, for these valuable insights. So for those of you who are watching us, please put in your comments, questions, whatever you want to discuss. Are you using caudal epidural in your practice, and how you are doing it? If there is any insights you'd like to ask, any questions or discuss, please feel free to comment here. And now, Dr. Pranav and Akhil, if you would like to ask anything and discuss anything, so you can now.
Can I add something to this discussion?
Sure, sure, sure.
Just a small trivia. So I was going through the chapter of caudal epidural in Waldman textbook of medicine. Have you checked that out? Waldman Intervention Medicine.
Yes.
So they have described the ultrasonographic view in which you see the two humps of the caudal canal and a bridge in between. So they've described that as two nuns walking on the street. They've even put a picture of two nuns walking on a street. You should go back and look at it. It's in a standard pain textbook.
Yes, so I think that's quite intriguing. Waldman, by the way, is such a book that you'll get all the short notes, and they're beautifully described, even with the diagram which you can actually draw. So I highly recommend all the fellows to go through that book. You'll get, you may not get like detailed studies or something, or maybe your brain may not get that stimulated, but whenever you're preparing a short note or something, so then probably that is the best book to have, and very, very handy. What do you say, Sai?
Yeah. And interesting stuff like this, so it keeps you engaged.
Great. Akhil, if there are any more questions, Akhil, Pranav, or audience, if you want to ask anything, ask. I'll give you a few seconds, and otherwise then I'll go to the next topic.
I just want to ask that how far is a pre-ganglionic approach superior to a post-ganglionic approach?
Sai, by the way, what are you using, Sai, in your practice?
Conventional.
Okay, so that means the post-ganglionic approach.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm using the conventional post-ganglionic approach, and which one to use? You should use the one which you know how to do best. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, that holds true for all the pain procedures.
Yes.
I
think that is very much true.
So the article by Lee et al. In the Korean Journal of Pain, they discussed that if there was a herniation in the foraminal area, or the foraminal herniation, then the drug in the post-ganglionic approach will not achieve the same effect as a pre-ganglionic approach, or a same approach at the supra-adjacent vertebral space. So this is what they have written. There is no randomized clinical trial on it. It's just a retrospective study, and it has been done only in 20 patients. And what they said was, out of 19 patients, 4 patients had release in the typical transforaminal approach, conventional one, And out of 2019 patients had 100% relief in the preganglionic approach.
Okay. See,
And
Dr.
that is
Akhil,
the
yes.
that is the only study which is given such results.
Okay. So to be honest, I got introduced to preganglionic approach by this paper and by you today. And I have always used a conventional approach. And I would, there are quite a few participants today for the journal club. Maybe they might tell if any of them has used the preganglionic approach. I
So
haven't.
guys, what are you using in your practice? Just type in the chat box. Show us pre or post. Just write whatever you are using, or don't know also you can write, because some of us may not be knowing that these kind of approaches exist. So type in the chat box pre, post, or don't know.
And also, Dr. Akhil himself has mentioned so many limitations of this technique. It has been described in a very small number of patients and in a not a randomized study or anything like that. So again, that's what I'm telling you. In practice, safety before anything else, and stick with the technique that you are most comfortable with and confident in.
Great. So I think that's it for today. And what we will do now is go on to the next, I can say, agenda. And this is some announcements and some information for you, and some very exciting announcements, of course. So before we go there, special thanks to both the presenters for the excellent presentation, and also to you, Sai, for coming in and helping us out with the journal club today.
My pleasure. I would like to join more often.
Okay, thank you. Sure. So I think this is it for my side. Just forgot to make an animation. Okay, so now I can make it full screen. So so guys, the secret of getting things done is to act. So please join our mailing list, and I think you can find all the links in the chat box, and join our mailing list, our WhatsApp group. You can find the link in chat or in email. And very happy to announce the upcoming ultrasound guided spine MIPSI webinar. This is a pure webinar which will have never seen before procedures, and it will be held on 25th and 26th June, 6 to 8 p.m. Details will shortly follow. But before that, we have a very big event coming, and this is a pain debate. So this is the second debates in the series, and this is a debate on the topic whether ultrasound is better than fluoroscopy for spine interventions. So the same time next week we will have this. For registration, you can click on and go to this link which I have mentioned. I'll also post it in the chat in a while. And we will have two good speakers speak on whether ultrasound is better than fluoroscopy for spine intervention. This will be doing it next week. So I think that's it from our side for today. As mentioned, I've just posted the link here. You can just register for this Zoom meeting. And this is the second debate in the series. First was on spinal cord stimulation. So I think that's it from our side from today. Thank you all. Thank you, Sai. Thank you, Pranav. Thank you, Akhil. And taking your leave.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great job, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.